you want to book in advance. Now, I know sometimes you can get a really good deal if you book last minute. It happens. But do you want to risk that? Because it's not guaranteed that when you're about to travel, you get that good deal. It's not a guaranteed situation. So the best thing to do if you're traveling on a budget is to book in advance. Because when you book in advance, you're more likely to get a good deal. If you book in advance, I have done it several times. And when I booked, I actually made it a point to compare the prices. I just wanted to see, I wanted to prove this. So I booked my ticket and it cost me whatever it cost me. And then I checked nearer the time, just as I was about to travel. I checked what the prices were for the same airline, and I discovered that the prices had nearly doubled. So this is why I would advise anyone who is traveling on a tight budget to book in advance. And also the good thing about booking in advance is that there are travel agencies that will actually allow you to pay in installments. They can give you like 4 months or 3 months installments. So if you book in advance, that is possible for you to do because you have plenty of time to actually pay those installments rather than you booking last minute, because unfortunately they can only tell you the price that is available, and it is more likely that the prices would have gone up and you no longer have that option to pay in installments over a considerable period of time, something that you can actually manage if you're on a tight budget, because those travel agencies will be able to work with you. And also sometimes when you're booking that ticket, maybe you've called up the agency and say, oh, can you find me an affordable ticket to go to Zimbabwe or to Spain or to Greece, wherever you want to go. Then if you book in advance, they might tell you, okay, we have a flight, but are you flexible? How flexible are you? Now, that flexibility, it's mostly possible if you book in advance, if you plan your trip in advance. And also planning means that you have to look at your work schedule, your rota, and put in a request in advance so that when you're booking, you know exactly what your work schedule is like. And then when you're booking, you can book knowing that, okay, these are the dates that I've got and I have got a bit of leeway. I can adjust. Now, having said that, if you're on a strict budget, you really want to book during off-peak season. You don't want to book during peak season like Easter, summertime, Christmas time, and so forth. During those times, it is a given that tickets will be higher than the other times. So if you know that your bank balance is not looking that healthy, then even though you want to go during the summertime, consider going a little earlier or after the summer period to save a bit of money. And another important thing as well to mention is when you're picking the flight, consider budget airlines. Consider airlines such as Ryanair, FastJet, and so forth. The next thing to look at is accommodation. Obviously, if you're traveling to a place, you need a place to stay. Now, if you're on a strict budget, then you want to consider options that will actually make it possible for you to save a bit of money. You can consider shared accommodation. That's one way to save money. Or you can do Airbnbs as well. Those tend to be cheaper, especially if you book in advance. If you prefer a guest house or a hotel, having said that, yes, we know hotels sometimes tend to be expensive, more expensive than shared accommodation, some lodges and so forth. But if you do it in advance, or if you book in advance rather, there are places like booking.com and other sites. I tend to use booking.com. Whenever I've done my booking well in advance, I have been able to find cheap accommodation. In 3-star hotels, 4-star hotels, I've been able to find something that I can actually afford. It is because you do it in advance. Because again, just like the flights, the prices go up nearer the time. This is because those accommodation get filled up. The spaces or the rooms become fewer and fewer nearer the time. So if you book in advance, you have more options to choose from. And also what I've realized is that sometimes we look at the stars. And I know, yes, stars are an indication of the type of hotel or the quality or the type of services. And as we know, the higher or the more the stars, the better the quality of hotels. That is like in an ideal world, that is what you're supposed to get. But what I've realized is that sometimes those stars don't always indicate what's actually on the ground, meaning that if you're in a tight budget, some of the stars like 3-star hotels, 2-star hotels, some of those places, if you look carefully, you'll find that some of those places are actually good places. Some of the services that you get from a 3-star hotel are actually better than some of the services you get from a 4-star hotel. I've actually experienced this. Another important thing to consider when it comes to accommodation on a strict budget is location, location, location. This is because if you're on a tight budget, you want a location that is convenient. You want a location where you can access services, other services that you need. For example, you want to stay in a place where you can easily find supermarkets nearby, or where there are markets nearby, vegetable markets and so forth. You want to stay in a place that is convenient, a place where you can easily find transport, or a place where that allows you to connect from one place to the next easily. You don't want to book a place that is in a remote place where it is difficult for you to find transport to connect from one place to the next. I did that when I went to Portugal. Unfortunately, I wasn't wise when I was booking a place to stay. I didn't look carefully. And also a contributing factor was that it was my first time going there and I didn't know what I was doing, quite frankly. And maybe I should have asked people who come from there for advice. That is another thing as well. If you're not sure, best to ask or best to do your research. You need to do your research properly. So in my situation, when I went to Portugal, I didn't research. I just picked a hotel that had good prices and I thought, oh wow, this is, a cheap hotel and it looks nice. It has got everything that I want. I'll go for it. Unfortunately, what I didn't realize was that hotel, that very nice hotel, was in a place that was difficult to access from town, from the city center. I had to catch a taxi to go to that place and it was a long ride. So I ended up spending more than I anticipated. It was a real wake-up call on my part. I actually ended up hiring a car, which cost me more, and also realizing that they actually drive on the wrong side of the road over there, meaning that they don't drive on the left side of the road. They drive on the right side of the road. So you can imagine what a nightmare that was for me. But however, I ended up having a wonderful time. It was a bit of an adventure for me. So these are things that you want to consider. My next tip is to do with money to spend, to spend on food, transport, and so forth. The very first thing that you want to do is you want to check the currency of that country. Find out just how much you need in general, how much you need to spend in a day. And this is important because when you do your budgeting, you want to look at how much you can realistically afford to spend with your budget in a day. From that knowledge, you want to look at other ways to save. How can you save on transport? How can you save on food? I'll give an example of how you can save on the amount of money you spend on food. If you're staying in a hotel, for instance, you don't always have to go to the restaurant to have food there. And usually when you book, you have the breakfast sorted. So if you have breakfast sorted and you decide, okay, I have my breakfast sorted because when I booked, I included breakfast, which is always a wise thing to do because breakfast is an important meal of the day. So you have your breakfast sorted. So what you can then do is to opt to have just the dinner at that restaurant, or you can actually buy food from the market. This is why I said you need a convenient place, somewhere where you can easily access the markets or the supermarkets, somewhere where you can go and buy food from another place. You can get a takeaway, you can get fruits or something else to keep in your room. You don't always have to have food at the hotel or whatever place that you're staying at. If you're on a tight budget, that is something that you can do. And when it comes to transport, you can save money by booking your trips in advance and actually planning your trips in advance. You can do day excursions, or you can book for like 4-day experiences. Instead of doing them separately, you have options. There are certain places where you go where you have the option to actually do block bookings. For example, if you go to Victoria Falls, you can actually book for a 4-day experience. And if you book in advance, you can actually get a discount. Personally, I use TripAdvisor whenever I'm booking for my activities because on TripAdvisor, if you book in advance, you can actually get a discount. The prices tend to be cheaper if you do that. So you can book your trips as blocks and in advance. So you can have those day trips, half-day trips to avoid you going back and forth or finding transport to go to places. So that's another way you can save on transport. And also, again, that's why I say, when you're booking your accommodation, look at the location. Location is king, it's queen. Because if a place is convenient, sometimes you can literally walk to wherever you want to go. You don't need to catch a ride. So it is worth considering things like that because every little helps. So you want to save as much as possible. Having said that, let me just say that, yes, you're on a strict budget. You give yourself the maximum amount of money that you're prepared to spend. And that's another thing, actually. You need to be disciplined. If you decide, okay, you're going to spend $30 or £30 a day, then stick to it. Because I know the temptation is just high. You go to a place, you get excited, you see this, you want to do it, you see that, you want to buy. but avoid, like, resist the temptation. I remember when I went to Victoria Falls, there were a lot of things being sold, nice sculptures. There were lots and lots of things to buy. And it was hard for me to resist, especially if you're using a card, because, you know, with a credit card or a debit card, you don't necessarily see the money dwindling from your account, but that doesn't mean that it is not dwindling. You don't see those charges, those hidden charges. So this is why discipline is important if you're operating on a tight budget. Decide this is how much you want to spend and stick to it. However, on the flip side of that, if you're planning your trip and of course you're on a budget, there are times when you can actually give yourself a little bit of leeway. For example, having done your research and discovering, okay, if I want to go to Zimbabwe, I'm going to need $30 to spend in a day. Looking at your budget, you can decide, okay, I'm going to top up $5. I'm going to put $5 on top of that. So I have 35 pounds or $35 rather instead to spend. So that will give you a bit of leeway so that you're not stressing too much. Yes, I know we are operating on a strict budget, but that doesn't mean that we have to punish ourselves. So sometimes it is worth us just giving ourselves a little bit of buffer. I like to have that little bit of buffer because when you go on holiday, sometimes you see something that you absolutely must have, or you plan your activities only to discover that actually there is one more activity that you absolutely must partake in, because some activities are a once in a lifetime opportunity. So this is why I always suggest giving yourself a little bit of a buffer, because you don't want to miss an important opportunity, because some trips, as I said, are a once in a lifetime trips, and also there are other inconveniences that may arise, inconveniences to do with transport and so forth. So if you've got that buffer, you won't stress too much. Another thing to consider as well is to do with your packing, the things that you actually carry on your holiday. So depending on the weather, depending on the situation, you only want to carry what you need. I tend to overpack myself. I have to confess, I can never decide on which clothes I want to take. I always have to have more clothes than I actually need. But if you're going on holiday, you're not going to a fashion show. You're going to enjoy yourself. So prioritize comfort over anything else. Of course, there are certain places where you need to attend evening events, you need to attend dinners and so forth. If that is something you want to do, then find out the dress code. You may need to carry different clothes depending on what it is exactly you're going to be doing, where you're going, and so forth. So look at your packing. If you're on a strict budget, there's no need for you to go overboard with the clothes. You don't need to buy new clothes. Sometimes you find that if you go to certain places, you find people are wearing t-shirts. People are wearing flip-flops because they're on holiday to enjoy themselves. Those activities are their priority, not the clothes you're wearing. So dress for fun, dress for comfort more than anything else. And my last tip is to do with communication, because I know when we're on holiday, we like to take pictures. We want to go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and share all those precious moments with our loved ones back home. So in that case, you want to consider your phone bill. You want to look at your contract, because people have got different phone contracts, and depending on the contract that you're on, depending on the package that you've got, you will be charged. If you go to foreign countries and you use your phone, you will be charged. So you want to use the Wi-Fi whenever possible, because Wi-Fi in some places is free. So you want to use free Wi-Fi whenever you can if you want to save on your phone bill, because you don't want to incur those roaming charges. And another option as well is to consider buying a local SIM card to make phone calls, send text messages, to avoid those roaming charges. So these are some of the options that you want to consider to save on your phone bill. So this is pretty much what I had to share with you in this video. As always, I hope you found these tips useful. If there are other tips that you want to share with us, then by all means feel free to share them in the comment section. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.